what's going on, y'all? T-Bob here.
And Jake as well.
And you're about to watch a little OTB LSU.
We're going to give you all the latest, greatest between LSU football, baseball, women's basketball, softball, and everything in between.
Bottom line, if you want to talk Tigers, keep it locked, subscribe, like it.
So a quick thought here on LSU South Carolina. I'm looking at the LSU injury report, and it's a bit disheartening, right? It just kind of shows how an already kind of questionable season here in the beginning can be reinforced by what you could say arguably bad luck. Some would say, I don't know, injuries are weird. Like, okay, so John Emery Jr. already out for the year. You got Prince Malber who's out for this game. Cole Roberts, Jake Ibieta, CJ Jackson, Jacoby Guillory out for this game. Chris Hilton Jr. is still questionable. Jordan Allen now questionable. Kyle Parker still questionable. Deshaun Womack now questionable. West Weeks questionable. And Garrett Dellinger probable. And it's not exactly the injury report that you want to see when, in many ways, I feel like the season is on the line for this team. As we said yesterday, what is the truth of this LSU team? Are they more of the USC, the team that battled USC to the very end and arguably should have won that game? Or are they more of the muddied mess that it looked like against Nichols? And so with so much hanging in the balance, not exactly ideal to be down this many bodies.
So, yeah, a couple of those, you're going to be without, they're going to be, out for the year. It doesn't make it easier. You still, you at least you expect that. There's a couple on there like Jordan Allen. That could be huge. That's somebody that plays a position where you're not deep and you need bodies. Now, depending on some position changes, maybe you add a body, which I know we'll get into to the safety rotation. Wes Weeks is somebody that's played a ton of football as well. Like if he couldn't go, like getting Dellinger back does seem like that's going to be obviously an added benefit. Although I thought Adams played pretty well a week ago. So there's some names on there of guys that like Deshaun Womack, like that's somebody that you're, counting on coming in and giving you 10 to 12, snaps at edge rusher where he's trying to get after the quarterback. So which one of those names do you think, if they're not able to go, of the guys that we know have, some chance of going, not obviously Jacoby and Guillory would be a name, but we know he's out. Which one do you think is the most impactful?
It's Chris Hilton, and maybe not the most, maybe Allen's most impactful. I don't know. That could be
because I mean, for me, like it's not Hilton because of Anderson and Thomas stepping up, and I know Chris Hilton's different. I know that. I know he's he's a guy that nobody else has that type of speed going down the sideline, but I think the emergence of those two guys has been huge for missing a guy that you were counting on like Hilton.
So I say Hilton simply because I guess I'm not answering the question exactly as asked. Because like I said, right, it's maybe not the most impactful, but it is the most symbolic of how this year has gone so far, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is supposed to be year 3 for Brian Kelly. This is supposed to be the year in which he breaks out. I mean, he very much set the stage for that. Last year, he kind of pushed off all the year 2 expectations, talked about year 3, and then he opened up his SEC Media Days press conference this year, speaking about how everywhere that I've been, there's been a marked uptick in the 3rd year. In that same way, this was supposed to be Chris Hilton's breakout year. We had seen the flashes.
Yeah.
He definitely had moments last year, but this was going to be the time. Now, the couple of first rounders gone, he was going to step into the spotlight, and he was going to be the guy. So it's been a very disappointing year for LSU thus far. It's been a very disappointing year for Chris Hilton thus far. And really, Jake, I keep thinking about this year 3 thing. And again, not because, again, I'm going to enjoy every game, like I said, individually for the football itself. There's no checking out on this team. But there is so much on the line in this South Carolina game. In fact, kind of how this year 3 is going to go is all on the line. And so by extension, how the LSU fan base feels about Brian Kelly is on the line. If you don't win this Saturday, again, it's not like there's going to be any changes made, whatever. We know that we're married, right? We got to figure this relationship out. But if you don't win this Saturday, you're not going to really have too many people giving you the benefit of the doubt anymore. You're not really going to have too many people believing that you are the guy or you are capable anymore, which whatever. Brian Kelly probably doesn't care because again, his job safety, his time, they're recruiting well. Like he'll have the opportunity to prove them wrong in the end. But in terms of like LSU fans standing behind the current regime, if you don't beat South Carolina, that noise is going to increase exponentially.
Yeah, I don't think there's any question about that. I mean, you're exactly right. It's a game that in the preseason, you almost hand waved. You're like, oh, on the road in the SEC, but now look, we got to look at, Ole Miss and Alabama and Oklahoma and all and at A&M, and you didn't talk about South Carolina because it's a game that you thought, yeah, we're going to go up there and we're going to win the football game if you're an LSU fan. So I agree with you. If you don't win this one, I think the conversation, the narrative, all that changes. Now, again, nothing will, happen. Nothing will come of it because you are married to Brian Kelly. But this is one you have because, like, if you went into the Alabama game and you were 6-2, right, but your losses were to USC and let's say a close game against Ole Miss, that feels completely different than if you were 6-2 and one of your losses is against South Carolina. And then USC, like even if you beat Ole Miss, like it just feels like I don't even know if beating Ole Miss could make up for you losing to South Carolina as far as some of the outside noise.
I would if that happened, I would actually think that people would be happy because
they'd be happy, but you would have a fraction that would be like, you can't even beat South Carolina.
In the same way that they were mad that you had Jaden Daniels win a Heisman last year, but you didn't have a defense to complement him. Like on the whole, you're happy, but there is some lurking frustration in the back. I think if you beat Ole Miss, that does represent a bit of a get out of jail free card for whatever has happened before, especially if you're 6-2 going into that Bama game. Unfortunately, if you lose to South Carolina, I don't know how to craft a world where I could pick you to beat Ole Miss. Like that would be a massive upset, which admittedly we've seen. We have seen.
Yeah. Even at Arkansas and at A&M, those feel – A&M doesn't feel different. Now, we'll see what A&M is against a bad Florida team this week, but Arkansas on the road sure feels different.
Taylor Green against what we've seen out of this defense thus far, it feels like that guy could have a lot of success, right?
Him and Jackson in the backfield, yeah.
It's pretty precarious right now. And I want to be clear, when I say married to Brian Kelly, I don't want that to be misconstrued as a negative. Well, my expectations have certainly taken a pretty marked step back for this year. Sometimes, I'm willing to accept that a lot of things can kind of go wrong, but maybe not be indicative of the overall quality of a process or a coach or a hire. And so I think it's not the worst thing here that you're almost not allowed to be reactive. Like if this year really does go south, I don't think it's the worst thing that you can't be too reactive and that you have to stick with it, because I do believe I still maintain this will bear fruit in the end. I am certainly very disappointed with how this year's had started. I'm disappointed with the failure to address a lot of the personnel issues defensively. But again, to show you the margins in football, you beat USC and none of these conversations are happening, right? And you were very close to doing so. So the bottom line is you control your destiny. Go win this Saturday on the road in South Carolina, kind of stabilize a bit. Feels like you're almost bleeding out a little bit on the trauma. Let's just stabilize a bit, like you did a couple of years ago, and then figure it out going forward from here.
Our guy Dane inside the chat, Les Miles 2.0. Les won a natty and played for another one. I know that the entire time that he was there were certainly things that we can nitpick, but you win a natty and play for another one in a decade, period of time. In today's college football, is that a bad thing?
Now, but let's also just
how many? There's what, 3 or 4? 3 right now currently coaching that have won a natty. That's just saying. I'm just saying how hard it is. Let's not just act like it's.
There's Mac Brown,
Kirby,
Dabo Sweeney,
and Dabo.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, because Jim Harbaugh's now with the Bush League Bolts.
Jimbo's gone.
Jimbo's with me.
The thing is,
shows.
though, I will say this just in defense of that conversation, like, Les, obviously, I'm not taking away from the overall tenure because 2011 was 100% firmly his team that made a natty, right? But it is also undeniable that Les took over a Lamborghini and Kelly did take over a broken down jalopy. Like that is factual.
I mean, we were 04, the program was super stable
y'all,
for
I
sure.
know it was a rough year in 04, but y'all had dudes.
Yeah, but it was 3 years later also, like, we were Les's team. I mean, us freshmen played for Coach Saban for sure, but
so we can call 07 Les's team as well. I'm just saying the situations they took over, I do believe were pretty extremely different.
Yeah, what BK took over was the lowest that I had seen the program since the 90s, the early 90s, when we were thrilled to make the Independence Bowl, like fired up to make the Independence Bowl. Like, it was a big deal to make it against Michigan State and, funny enough, Nick Saban. So, I agree with that wholeheartedly. I covered the Texas Bowl. I was on the sideline for that game when you had 38 scholarship players or 39, whatever that number was. That was the only time in my life I felt embarrassed being an LSU guy. It was embarrassing. Like, the number of people you had, like, what you had to do in that bowl game. Coaches were, basically 2 feet out the door for the most part. Shout out to Brad Davis for trying to hold it down during that bowl game. That was as bad as it possibly could be.
I mean, honestly, Chad's kind of saying this right now too. A lot of times sports works like this. Maybe Kelly's greatest enemy is actually the year one success. Finding Jarek Bernard Converse, Mekhi Gardner, Greg Brooks, Fouché out of the portal, putting together a pretty salty secondary out of nowhere immediately next year that they haven't been able to replicate either last year or this year thus far. But by the way, okay, we're getting a little too big. I think this is my fault because I let us here. We're getting a little too big a conversation. The bottom line is you have to beat South Carolina this weekend, okay? They're exciting in some ways, but they are deeply flawed, and they still should not be as good as you.
Wow, Jake, what incredible takes.
I mean, those guys, they're just the best.
I think so. And if you think so, again, hit the like button, subscribe, ring the bell so you get notifications when we post every single day here on OTB LSU.